Well, with us being well underway with the 2015 NFL Scouting Combine, I thought it was a perfect time to come on here and do another hashtag NFL Draft Q&A. So thanks to all of you that participated by tweeting your questions to @pfspot_Schlegel on Twitter. I appreciate it. And also, for you NFL draft heads, make sure you check out all my other great draft-related content on this channel, my mock drafts, and I've started doing scouting reports for individual players, and there'll be lots more draft content to come in the next 2+ months here on this channel. Let's get started with this Q&A, though. Good guy here asked, if the Bears opt for an edge rusher, who would you like to see them draft? Assuming with the 7th overall pick, I most certainly would not want to see it be Randy Gregory. That's just a no, 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 no. Good God, please no for me. In terms of the edge rushers, I would prefer Shane Ray, but he's not going to be there. Dante Fowler from Florida, I like him a lot. I also like Bud Dupree from Kentucky, even though at this point I like Fowler's game a little bit more, and I think he's more worth the 7th overall pick than a Bud Dupree is. But either one of those two guys in terms of edge rushers, I'm not quite as high on Vic Beasley. I don't think he translates as well to the 3-4 as either one of those two guys doing Fowler or Dupree. So those would be one of the two edge rushers that I would have a preference with if that's the direction that Ryan Pace and John Fox wanted to go with that first-round pick. History Buff 188. Do you see the Bills drafting a quarterback in the 2nd round? I think it's possible. They might want to chalk up E.J. Manuel as a loss already. They might be trying to find Rex Ryan a quarterback to work with. I don't know if the 2nd round of this draft is the place to find one. But I think they really should be focusing on running back or maybe even tight end. If they go tight end, maybe Clive Walford from Miami. But if they go running back, man, this is a really good running back class, and it's very deep, especially rounds 2 through 4. There's a lot of talent there, a lot of potential NFL starters. The Bills, with Fred Jackson up there in age and C.J. Spiller, a free agent, they really need to explore running back in the 2nd round, whether it's Duke Johnson from the U or Tevin Coleman from Indiana, somebody who reminds me personally a lot of DeMarco Murray, somebody like Ajay Ajayi from Boise State. There's a lot of options there, even a T.J. Yeldon, let's say, from Alabama, who might potentially be there even in round 3. There's just a lot of running backs. They got to get one. And this is a good class of running backs to have a need for that position. That's where the Bills should be going in round 2, in my opinion. Baller B. Scott, how do you feel about Bo Wallace from Ole Miss? A guy that could have been so much more, maybe should have been so much more, but he ultimately wasn't. He really doesn't resonate for me on the draft scene. He's an undrafted free agent the way I look at him, if I'm being honest with you. Just not much there. Not much that really stands out to me that says, hey, you got to draft this guy, or hey, this guy has a lot of NFL potential. I just don't see it that way. And he also asked, which receivers could you see the Browns taking? None. No. All seriousness, oh, yes, and if you knocked me last year for questioning them taking Justin Gilbert when Odell Beckham Jr. was on the board, eat shit! Eat shit! There you go. Up yours. At pick 12, if they were to take wide receiver, you'd be looking at maybe a Devontae Parker from Louisville, who reminds me some of Josh Gordon, although not quite as explosive as Gordon. Maybe more so along the lines of Jordan Matthews, who played well at times for the Eagles in 2014 as a rookie. He was a guy coming out of Vanderbilt that I didn't quite understand why he didn't have more buzz about him. He was a guy with big size, decent hands, and he could move really well for his size. I see Devontae Parker, and I see a lot of that, and I see him being somebody that could be a nice replacement for Josh Gordon and a nice step forward for that Browns offense. If they didn't go there with him at 12, maybe at 19 you've got somebody like Jalen Strong from Arizona State or Devin Smith from Ohio State. Those would be other receivers to note in that later of the 2 first-round picks for the Browns. Alex Shirley, 10. Who should the Titans draft in the 1st round? I know this has been a point of great consternation for you when I've done a mock draft and I haven't had the Titans take a quarterback. Let me assure you, Alex Shirley, let's cut this bullshit out right now. The Titans should take a quarterback. They should take a quarterback. Whether it is Mariota or Winston does not matter. They should take a quarterback. They must take a quarterback. For them not to take a quarterback, in my opinion, would be completely and totally ridiculous. Are we clear? So when I do a mock draft in the future and I don't have them taking a quarterback, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I would do. That doesn't mean that I agree with that. In my opinion, they should be taking either Mariota or Winston, whichever quarterback is there for them at number 2. period. However, you also ask, which player should the Titans draft that's not a quarterback with the first pick? If they weren't going to take a quarterback with that number 2 overall pick, then it's got to be somebody on the defensive side of the ball because the Titans lack an identity. They brought in a 3-4 scheme last year and didn't have the personnel to run it. They need help for Jarrell Casey on the defensive line. Danny Shelton makes a world of sense playing the nose in that 3-4. Otherwise, you could sit there and maybe say Leonard Williams from USC, even though I prefer Danny Shelton as a prospect and think he projects better in the 3-4. I think Leonard Williams could definitely have a nice, long, productive NFL career and be a star, a Pro Bowler in a 3-4 as a kind of 5 technique defensive end. Otherwise, it's got to be an edge rusher. It's got to be an edge rusher. It's got to be somebody along the lines of a Shane Ray. It just has to be. It has to be one of those 3 guys. It has to be Danny Shelton, Leonard Williams, or Shane Ray. One of those 3 guys if they don't take a quarterback. Anybody else is ridiculous. Bulls_Jaden. Do you think Marcus Mariota will be a bust? Because I think he's a system player, and I think he's comparable to Matt Leonard. That's ridiculous. Sorry, dude. That's fucking ridiculous. Marcus Mariota does not compare to Matt Leonard. I don't know where the hell you come up with that. And no, I do not think Mariota will be a bust. In fact, I have rated him as my number 1 quarterback in the 2015 NFL Draft. Furthermore, all this talk about him being a system player is ridiculous to me in the sense that if he's a system player, then what the fuck is Jameis Winston? He's coming from a program and an offense under Jimbo Fisher that recently produced notable first-round flops like Christian Ponder and E.J. Manuel. You can sit there and say, well, is he different? Different. Well, we look at USC receivers. They have a stigma. There's been all different types of shapes and sizes and speeds of receiver that have come out of USC, and frankly, they haven't played very well at the NFL level. So that program as a whole has a stigma when it comes to that position, similar to what they did at quarterback, similar to what Michigan had for years at wide receiver, even with different types of guys and players at that position. So what's so different about Jameis Winston? What makes him so much fucking different? What makes this case so much different? It's not. Now, I'm not saying that Jameis Winston is a system quarterback. I don't believe that. So let me clarify that. But again, if we're going to go with that system bullshit, who's the real system quarterback? The answer is Jameis Winston, not Marcus Mariota. And then he also asked, if the Lions can't re-sign Sue, do you think they should trade up for Leonard Williams? No. That would be way too much to give up for a defensive lineman. Way too much. To move up from 24? Is that what Detroit's picking? 23? Yeah, I think it might be 23. It'd be move up from 23 to the top 5 for a defensive tackle? You're nuts. Especially when they could end up with somebody like maybe an Eddie Goldman or a Malcolm Brown out of Texas at that spot, maybe a Jordan Phillips out of Oklahoma. No, you can't do that. NFL draft guy asked, a guy I like a lot of running back that doesn't get the publicity is David Johnson from Northern Iowa. Who do you like under the radar at running back? I've got 2 guys. One is Malcolm Brown from Texas. Here's a guy that was a former 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He's never quite pieced it together, never really unleashed his full potential, but he's a guy that still has a lot to like physically as a runner at the NFL level, a between the tackles thumper, and a guy that I think he could get to the NFL level and surprise some people, be a real late-round steal. Another late-round steal that I really like that's really flying under the radar is Zach Center out of South Dakota State. Here's a guy that has to fight against that stigma of being a white running back, being lumped into the category of Peyton Hillison, Brian Leonard, and so on and so forth. But what people fail to see, even though a lot of people are trying to talk about him needing to move to fullback, bullshit, he needs to move to fullback. He needs to stay his ass where he is at running back. This is a guy at 6 foot, 220 pounds that can move. He can move. He's got some legit speed. Here's a guy that runs between the tackles with will and some force. He's not the most electric and explosive kind of side-to-side back. He's not the greatest cutter in the world, but he could be a productive role-playing back who can also catch the ball out of the backfield at the NFL level. I think he's a guy that's not nearly getting the amount of buzz that he should get. And then he also asked, who is currently your number 1 corner? I haven't fully formalized my list yet of corners, and it'll be a few weeks before I get to them. Like, I've watched all these different prospects at all these different positions, but I'm just now really starting to rank and categorize everybody. Like, I'll put it this way, as you're starting to see my scouting reports for quarterbacks, I'm now actually working on finishing up the wide receivers and preparing those. Then I'll be moving on to running backs. You get the idea. So quarterbacks, it'll still be probably at least another month before I finalize my rankings. At this moment, the way it stands right now, My number one corner would be Quentin Rollins from Miami of Ohio. But again, I have to watch more closely, and I haven't made that final determination yet. But at this moment, that would be my number one corner in this draft. Brian_Dendo. If Mariota is there at 7, should the Bears trade down with Philly to get more picks since Marcus fits Kelly's system? Man, that would be an incredibly intriguing option, wouldn't it? Knowing that if the Eagles moved up from 20 to 7, that would ensure the Bears of getting a second rounder this year, perhaps a fourth rounder this year, and maybe like a first and a third next year, and maybe even a second or first in the following year's draft. That's a lot of picks for a team that badly needs them and badly needs to rebuild through the draft. But goddamn, man, you either have a quarterback or you don't at the National Football League level. And you've seen what the Bears have been the past 6 years without a quarterback when they have Jay Cutler. The Bears need a quarterback. Mariota can be that guy. It would be tempting. It would be appealing. And I don't think Mariota is personally going to be there at 7, no matter how much it's going to break my heart. But if he was there, if somehow miraculously Marcus Mariota was going to be there at number 7, which I don't believe he will be, if he was there, the Bears must take him. They must take him. And fuck all that trade down shit. Fuck all that get additional picks and, oh, we're going to create a juggernaut. You'd still be looking for a quarterback. Get the quarterback. Figure out the rest of the shit later, period. Peter Kuzmenko. Who do you think the Jags will draft with the 3rd pick? They've won offense the past, 4 years now? Gabbard in 11, Blackman in 12, Jokel in 13, and Bortles in 14. The funny thing is that by far their biggest need is on the offensive side of the ball, and it's on the offensive line. It's at offensive tackle. With that said, I don't know that there's a tackle that's really worth taking 3rd overall in this draft, especially considering the recent track record of offensive tackles being taken in the 1st round isn't the best over the past few years if you really sit down and analyze it. With that said, I'd assume they would go on the defensive side of the ball and take the best available defensive player that fits what they want to do. Whether that's Leonard Williams or Shane Ray, I'm not really sure. But I would have to think at this point in time, those would be the 2 guys that would be the leaders in the clubhouse to be Jacksonville Jaguars at the 3rd overall pick. And then IMPT3 closes out this Q&A by asking, should the Steelers look for a number 3 slot receiver later in the draft after they fill their needs? It's a really good wide receiver class again this year. I don't think it's quite as deep from beginning to end as the 14 class was. But, man, that talent is almost every bit as good through the first 4 to 5 rounds. The thing is, though, the Steelers are so bad in the back portion of that defense. To me, their first 5 to 6 picks have to be on the secondary and on outside linebackers, pass rushers. That's where they have to devote the lion's share of their emphasis in this draft. So, yeah, it'd be nice. Maybe if you have a guy, you're sitting there, let's say, in the 4th round, and you really, really value somebody like Tyler Lockett out of Kansas State, and somehow, some way he's there, then you maybe have to consider pulling the trigger. But with that said, man, they really got to focus on that secondary and focus on getting some pass rushers outside in that 3-4. Those are the Steelers' biggest needs, and that's how their entire draft board should really be structured. They should only have corners, safeties, outside linebackers on their draft board. That's simple. So thanks again for all of you guys that submitted your hashtag NFL Draft Q&A questions. I'll be doing another one of these next week. I would like to get to the point of doing 2 of them a week, but I need more questions, more participation from you. So those of you that are watching that haven't tweeted your questions to me, what's your holdup? Do it, damn it!